Hello and welcome to Turning Point Tactics, the competitive Kill Team 40k podcast, focused on giving you the strategies and tactics to seize initiative every turning point. I'm your host Ryan, and I'm joined by the Johnny English to my James Bond, Connor. How you doing this evening, Connor?
I'm very good, thanks, Ryan. We've just had a brilliant weekend, haven't we? Up in Nottingham at Warhammer World, the tournament there. Should we discuss that today?
Absolutely. I genuinely think it was probably one of the best weekends of Kill Team I've ever had. But not for the Kill Team, which is like kind of an unusual thing. But for everything that surrounds Kill Team, right? And that's kind of like, I think
the community aspect was brilliant, wasn't it? It was nice to see all the people there. And you say about the Kill Team angle. What was nice for me was seeing how good the changes to Kill Team are. So we've got these new tac ops now, and I sort of took them for granted. And for those of you that weren't aware, we played this tournament on the old tac op rules, and it's nice to see how good things have become with the new rules. Just work. They're just better. They're simple changes, but they're nice changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say to give people the story, if you weren't tracking, everyone bought the tickets for this tournament a little while ago. It was initially advertised as being 4 rounds with the new missions and new tac ops. Sadly, due to like a timing error or whatever else, they had to go down to 3 rounds, which for a 68 player tournament is pretty tough to get a undecided winner. And then not just that, but they found out last moment that they wouldn't be able to do the support they were hoping to get people the rules for the new missions and the new tac ops available on the day. So they had to go back to the old missions and old tac ops. So that was quite a significant change for a lot of people's preparation, I think, going into it. I know loads of people have been playing on the new maps and new missions. But as you said, kind of like, I think for me it was really refreshing just to quickly dip your toe back into what we had before, and then you can be like, oh yeah, actually all these changes, they really are
They're great, aren't they?
very good changes. They've hit the nail on the head when it comes to, I think, competitive changes for future. So it was a swan song to the old old way of playing Kill Team. But like, yeah, I think you're right. It's definitely showing the progress that we're making about making the game into a much more competitive focus and much more balanced game overall. And yeah, it was good to do that one final time. I think we sort of joked about it beforehand that we knew that we probably weren't going to do too well. I got close to doing okay, and then got hammered on the last round by my teammates. So so like, but to be fair, I was cruelly betrayed. But he could not have been more deserving with the victory.
The Closs
And
Street
we'll talk
heresy.
about that in a bit. Yeah, we'll talk about it in a bit because it was a fantastic game. Like it was really clear to me, going into that game, that he had prepared far more for that matchup than I had. And I think on reflection, I was looking back at the game earlier on, and I was thinking, yeah, the first mistake I made was in kill team selection. So like from there, I was like, I was already onto a loser. But we'll talk about more about it in a bit because there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I think's worth covering. But yeah, we talk about the social side. So one of the coolest things I think about going to Warhammer World now is, as I've been traveling around the UK a little bit, I've gone to quite a few of the little local scenes, and you meet all the sort of the players, and Warhammer World is kind of like the pilgrimage that brings a lot of local scenes together. So we had a huge group come down from Manchester. We had a group come up from the Nottingham area, so obviously local to it, but where I locally play, they came up as well. We had some guys from Lincoln, where I play, well, come across. You had obviously the whole Slater clan come up north as well. And then we also had the guys from Hungary coming over. 2 guys from Hungary came over, one of which is part of the Turning Point Tactics team. And then there was a whole bunch of other people that I've met throughout the time in small community coming up as well. So like that morning on Warhammer was absolutely epic, because you're just like you're going in and you're just constantly meeting friendly faces and friends that you made along the way. And then throughout the day, you're catching up with them and seeing how they're getting on and how their games have been. So I think just for me, that is exactly what Kill Team is all about, right? And I think that's where I'm hoping that competitive Kill Team goes in future, because I had such a great time, and I'm making more and more friends every time I go. And the fact that we were playing old missions and old maps and all that sort of stuff it was frustrating, but that's not why we're there. We're there to play what is a really fun game with people that we enjoy hanging out with. And then I got to do a bit of socialising and drinking with the Manchester boys out in town afterwards as well, which was again really, really good fun. So yeah, it was pretty much a perfect Kill Team weekend, I think. But do you want to go into a bit of match analysis and tell me how you got on, Connor?
Yeah, sure. I had 3 games. Played against a guy called Toby, one of the game designers. He actually happened to be one of the not game designers, apologies, game testers, which is pretty cool seeing the way he. So what caught my attention? I'm like old 40k, so I measure everything in inches. I just can't break away from that. But he actually called things out in colors. I just thought that was interesting the way he would like describe it. Oh, that's circle away. That's or white actually he would say, and that's red over
Shows
there.
he's played the game a lot.
Yeah, well, it was one of those things where he clearly knew a lot, but we talk about it before. He's very fair, like forgiving and playing by intent, and it was a great game. Like to play against someone like that, it was tight, but it wasn't. There was no feel bads or anything like that. No gotchas. It was nice.
I also got to play against Toby in a tournament a little while ago.
Nice.
It was exactly the same thing. We played a Hunterclave mirror match and had the closest game. Ooh. It was like constantly tense, and I realized at the end he had much more experience in the team than me, and there was a point where I realized that had I done something differently, I probably could have won if I'd known the team better and done that votive force, whatever it is. Regain D3 wounds, but yeah, he's a great player, isn't he?
Yeah.
So how'd your game get on?
Well, he brought his Hunterclade again, beautifully painted. Don't know if he had the same ones against you.
Oh yeah, they're incredible.
Yeah. And he stopped me. I got slapped. Welcome to Warhammer World. You lose, but these things happen. But again, no feel bad. It was a really tight game. I think it was. I want to say 8-9 in the end. There's like a point in it, and it is how it is. Better man won. I'll come to my analysis at the end. Second game played against a chap called Ray. Again, talking about beautifully painted models. His Kazakin were great, and I think he actually picked up an award at the end, 3rd place or something.
Was he the judge's choice? I think he got judge's choice, didn't he?
Was he? Maybe, yeah. His models were still stunning. They were
because those Kazakin were pretty beautiful.
What was nice with Ray? So I won against Ray, but he's one of these guys that are new to Kill Team, picking up, I think, transitioning from 40k, trying to understand Kill Team. So when he assembled his Kazakin, I think he just chose the models that look cool. And there's an element of Kill Team that I think everyone should do that. What models look cool? I'm going to build those. But they weren't necessarily the best operatives for the job. So I think it just helped me get that win against him in that scenario.
So when you say they weren't the best option for the job, you mean just the whole Kill Team, right? That's kind of none of them are the best option for the job. That's the problem.
We've talked about elite points before, and he had I remember a horrendous hotshot volley gun thing, and there was nothing he could do about it. There's nothing he could do. He could just roll poorly, and you can use your elite points on one, but I'm in cover, so because I'm a crew, I'm gonna retain a crit, and what I don't care. On other scenarios, when he was shooting, it's like, and I can make this quite dangerous now, actually. So there is something to the elite points. Maybe we can evaluate them at some point. I don't know. But I had a fun game with him too. It was nice. And I also happened to, my third game, bump into Can You Roll a Crit, who it's nice because he's got a YouTube channel too, and I've seen a few of his videos to then actually play against him and see some of his operatives and his missions and stuff. It was a fun game, but he punished me. I got another L. So 1 for 2. That was my results. I had a little reflection about what it was and why I lost, because actually I think Crute were doing quite well. So our other teammate Ben, he took Crute with him. He did quite well. I think he came 9th actually.
He got 2 wins and a draw, didn't he? I think he had a really close game in the first one.
Yeah, he wasn't even against easy opponents. He was coming against Pathfinders, I think, Corsairs, Void Dancers, so some decent teams he was playing against, and he still got the win against them. So that's what part of my evaluation was reflecting. What was Ben doing that I wasn't doing? And one of the things he did, he took Seek and Destroy tac ops and used I forget what it's called, but I think it's Mercenaries, where they can shuffle in a different one. I wasn't doing that. Maybe I should have been. I was running Recon, and it meant that in the games I lost, I was only scoring about 2 on my tac ops, and obviously you get 6, and if I maxed them, the games were quite tight in the end. That would have been the difference between winning or losing. So that was a big part of it, perhaps tac op selection and going Recon, as opposed to, because Ben went Seek and Destroy. Maybe Seek and Destroy would have been the better option.
I think the lesson there is it's being able to switch between the 2 decks, because
yes,
I think you were getting really used to playing with the new Recon, and you effectively didn't have to because some of them are so strong. So you were just being able to take full Recon secondaries but under the old rules and those old tac ops, I think you had to use that ability to make sure you mix and match. But there's still some of that to be taken into the new game as well. Like, you got to look at the board and think, okay, maybe there's a play here for this or this. And I think switching between those archetypes is really good because it keep your opponent on their toes as well. If they're expecting you to go a certain way when you reveal one thing, but actually you come out with something else later on is a good strategy, I think.
Yeah, could be a coincidence perhaps, but the maps that I lost twice on was Morocco, and I do think that I wasn't playing it particularly well. I don't know. I really struggled to get my men in the positions I wanted them to be. I'll say it that way. The cover wasn't quite where I needed it, and I wasn't placing, like, you need to be a bit more precise perhaps on Morok, and I wasn't playing as precise as I should have done. So I think I got a bit punished there. So I need to practice on Morok a bit more, I think. And the other thing, the missions, talking about precision again, a lot of the missions I played, you had to be within 1 inch, not 2 inch, and you had to tap the objective. Now, I was talking about this with Can You Roll a Crit, and I was typically going in all meat for the durability, but perhaps trophy would have helped me a couple of times, or a few more trophies just to help me tap objectives at certain points, because they're only 2 APL crew moving onto objective, and if you're not precise, maybe a move, dash, tap, that sort of thing would have been a bit more advantageous. So definitely lessons to be learned from there. I think if I took crew again, I'd be stronger for it, and it was, all my games, absolute blast. Love playing it. One thing that was cool as well, actually, thinking about it, and back to Morok, how great is it that you're at Warhammer World and you've got a point where you're not quite sure what the rules are about like a certain thing and how it interacts with your abilities, and the lead game designer Elliot is there, and you can actually go and talk to him and say, what is your meaning for this? And the scenario was, Kroot have an ability called Bound. On Morok, the Stockades have an ability called Stockade, where it counts as 2 circle to get over it, and it says in brackets up and down. And Kroot have an ability with Bound, where they can ignore the first circle when they climb and ignore the first circle when they drop. So do they ignore this? What's going on there? And Elliot clarified, he said it's a climb, so it basically costs them a circle to move over it, so you can't dash over it. That it's not a drop when they're coming down, it's a climb up, climb down, if that makes sense. So what other tournament can you go and talk to the lead designer at? Do you know what I mean? How cool is that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And also he's like, he's a lovely guy. Like, he came over, and I think he probably went to every single table and spoke to everyone, or made sure everyone was having a good time. But yeah, like, the guy has made a fantastic game. Like, as far as I'm concerned, he's made a really good game, and I think I don't know if he has to be there or if he chooses to be there, but I think the fact that he is turning up to these tournaments to help just like settle any rules disputes that could possibly turn up, because there is no argument about what the rules intended are when the guy who wrote them is there, right? Like, that's really useful, and then I think also it can help inform any next iteration of FAQs or anything like that. So hopefully that sort of thing will be folds into the next set going forwards. I just wanted to touch on one thing that you said, because I think there was a tactical takeaway from that game you talked about. You talked about having the option of meat versus your trophy and that sort of thing. So obviously you can use your trophy once per turning point. You get to choose one. So I think you need to just have that strategy when you're setting up your models of, okay, this is an action based primary mission, and therefore I need to select models that I know on turn 1 is going to go forward and do this, and on turn 2 is going to go forward and do this, and you have to set them up in the position where they can then go and do that, because you can only really take 3 meat, right? So you need to be careful where you're using it, and not just throwing it down willy-nilly. I think that's the main lesson is have that plan and think, okay, how am I going to get to that objective over there on turn 1 if I need to score it? I'm going to use this, and this, and that's the game plan. So that's kind of the strategy I think that you've hopefully learned from that.
I think so, yeah.
New missions, half of them are going to be action-based, right? So
correct, yeah. But I don't think any of them are within an inch. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think they're all 2
inches now. Yeah, they're all 2 inches, which
can be a little bit more imprecise, which is nice for crew or other 2 APL models, I think.
Or bad players, yeah.
Or bad players, yeah. I didn't, as well. Let's clarify. The dice were terrible every single game. I can't.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. It was the dice. That was it. That was it. It was the dice. I remember. I got a great excuse about dice later on as well. I'm short now. I'm joking. So yeah, I obviously also met Elliot as well, which was really cool. We had a little chat at the start of the day because I was on table 1 playing a great guy called Michael and his Wormblade, and he had so a lot of them were Wormblade, like original models, but he had a bunch of Necromunda conversions that were in there as well, and they looked really good. And it was when they put them in the display cabinet, because it can sometimes hard to see the detail that people put into their models until you then get the light on them. And man, they looked incredible. But
oh yeah,
Yeah, that first game was on escalating hostilities, which is for breaches, I think probably the go-to mission. So that was a very favourable matchup for me, I think, because I want to be operating at close range. I want to sort of slowly trudge into the middle. I could take security tac ops under the old system, and all of them are going to be pretty much good with a combination of central control, seize ground, and the faction tac op as well. So I was in a good place going into that game. And I think he said that he'd just come from playing Legionary and he was picking up Wormblade for the sort of like the first or second time, whatever it was. So he was kind of new to the team. I was obviously kind of new to my team, but I think the mission heavily favoured the breaches. So that one was kind of good to go for me. So I was using a lot of the. So one of the other things is about Warhammer Wild, I should probably say, is that on their Octarius maps they don't use the doors. So some of the maps, when you look at it from a perspective of like if you play regularly on TTS or in your local scenes where you use doors, you might think, oh, that's really open and easy to move around. But actually, it can be quite restrictive based on how the terrain is placed. So you can be quite slow trying to get out of your deployment zone. But clearly, breaches, hatch cutter, you just cut straight through that, and you're able to start moving guys up into the midboard with relative ease. So that was quite a good first game for me. So I managed to max and go into round two, where I played another Ryan who I had previously played up north in Manchester. So it was a rematch for the Ryans. He was running his Legionary again, and he had like a Khorne to Tzeentch or Tzeentch, I think it is. Tzeentch roster, and last time I'd obviously played him with my Pathfinders, and this time I was going to the breaches. Now I think that that's a difficult matchup for breaches, and we played Seize Ground, where I think that was always going to be hard because I'm trying to cover off these three objectives, get into his half of the board, but he has far more survival and far more killing models than I have. But I think the fact that he was Tzeentch meant that I had the advantage, and he had some pretty shocking dice at points, which can be really rough. Yeah. Like plasma gunner running around the corner, shooting a guy, and rolling 4-2s is brutal.
Ouch.
Now it would have been okay, but he had spent his last CP trying to keep his leader alive previously, so he couldn't do Veterans of the Long War. Yeah. And that's kind of one of those points where you really have to be careful where you're spending your CP, because I think that then would have been a far more decisive moment to have that available to get a kill with the plasma. But in comparison to when I played him previously and played him that time, he'd made a lot of improvements, and it was a really close game until the end. And I just managed to at the end get enough damage through and take out some key models, which is really cool. And he'd been telling me that he'd been listening to the podcast and getting all the hints and tips, which was pretty awesome to see someone that's I think he'll agree. Like when we played up north the first time at Pathfinders, it was pretty one sided, and this game was far more dynamic and much closer. So that was really good, and obviously that set me up pretty well to go into the last round. And the one thing that I didn't want to happen happened, and I got paired with my teammate, and he's come a long way from Hungary all the way over Klostri. He's available on Discord and that handle if you want to chat to him about his Star Riders victory. But yeah, so we got paired up, and I'll on the YouTube whatever throw up a picture of the original map that we were going to play on, which I think everyone can agree probably isn't the best of map design, where effectively one side of the board was completely open and the other side had some cover. Combining that with the fact that it was consecration as well, so it was a difficult mission and difficult map. So he looked at me and we had a conversation. I was like, look, we can play as is, but it's basically going to be determined by who wins the attacker defender roll off, because the other person's going to have absolutely nowhere to hide on the board. And he agreed. So we went and spoke to one of the TOs and just said, look, if both opponents think that the map isn't good and we're both happy to rearrange it and rebuild it, does that work with you? And they're very accommodating of it, and they said, yeah, no worries, we'll come over and we'll double check and we'll watch you do it and make sure all parties are happy. So we did that, and as a result, we got a new map that was a much better layout and a much better setup for terrain, I think, to have a good game. But my inexperience of playing against Star Striders really showed, and I made silly mistakes at the start, like choosing the skull, because my game plan was going to be throwing guys onto the objectives with a robot and an APL2 dude to try and control those midline objectives early on in the game and hand out -1 APL to my opponent so that I could capture the objective. But clearly, if you know Star Striders, they can take those flash visors to ignore APL modifiers, and that was really key for him to be able to then basically shut down my ability to take those objectives. I basically went full Conor on turn one and just went in because I set up a plan.
Aggressive northern meta as well.
It's aggressive northern meta. That's what I did, and it did not pay off for me. It really did not pay off for me. I went against all my previous advice, and I don't really know why I did it. And I just kept doubling down as well because I realized, I think, midpoint of turning point one, that I made like some pretty catastrophic errors and I was about to get punished pretty hard for it. So I started increasing my risk level quite significantly, and none of those risks paid off. So I started using CP to try and kill a Voidmaster on the objective to try and get me a primary point swing, looking for a 3-up on a CP reroll, and obviously that failed, but I should never have been in that position in the first place, you know. So I was using CP poorly, and the game really ran away from me from there. So I ended up at the end of sort of turning point one realizing that I'd lost, and I was then in trying to do full damage mitigation to see if I could try and get some tac ops back later on and sort of slow play. So I had to then pull back, be really defensive, and that's really what I should have done from the offset. So, but the positive is that I learned a whole bunch about how to play breaches against Star Striders in future, because knowing what I know now, the strategy that I started that game with was never going to work, right? So I had to completely redo my strategy. I should have been dropping the robots. The cat I probably could have kept, but the other robot, no, definitely gone. Taking a bunch more armsmen and really set myself up for an explosive turn 2 and like trying to win the game in turn 3 and turn 4, rather than what I did, which was trying to directly contest Star Striders turn 1 and turn 2. Because for the plays that he did, he had to invest a lot of CP early on, and I think if I'd resource managed better, I could have just let him do that, spend all his CP in turn 1 and turn 2, and then I could have come back quite strongly into turn 3 and turn 4 and probably picked up enough points to either play for a draw or a very marginal win if I could deny him some tac ops. So that was kind of like my hindsight and one of the key lessons that I learned. And we can, we can do a bit more analysis of that in future as well. But what I'll try and do is we'll try and get Clostry on in the next podcast to talk about the whole game, I think, because that's got some good lessons there, and really the strengths of where Star Striders are at. And I think they are a really strong team, and I think they currently have like a 75% win rate against breaches. So I don't think anyone's quite yet figured out how to beat that matchup. But I've learned some lessons, and I really want to put them into practice. And I think maybe next time I can give him a much better game than the one I did.
That's also fair play to Clostry as well. You know, he didn't get complacent. He kept it methodical, kept it tight, and just that victory just kept it and won. Well done.
And right to the end as well. So like, and this is the kind of thing when you're playing at the highest competitive levels, is he was never going to let it have the risk of sliding. So even though, because obviously the main tiebreaker was tac ops, right? So even though we're teammates and that sort of stuff, we're playing it as competitively as we can, and he made sure to deny me all tac ops right to the end, right? Like there was, he could have won probably and just moved back and give me points, but that's not the way that we play the game. You know, he was fully in it, trying to make sure that there was no way that I could eke it back. So he was playing top of his game the whole way through, and made no mistakes. So he did the perfect run, and he had to do the perfect run. I think he only dropped 1 VP over all the games. So which is, absolute kudos to him for that. It was a pretty impressive display of Kill Team. One thing that I'm going to say is, like, again, from that event, I thought it was fantastic to meet so many people, and people were coming up to us, and for the first time ever, were like, "Oh, are you the guys from Turning Point Tactics?"
Yeah, that's cool, wasn't it?
And it's and that was really awesome for me, because it's like the first time that's ever happened to me about anything in that sort of way. And obviously we've hit about 300 subscribers now, and we're trying to push this out and do the good work. So it's really cool that people we're starting to meet people that have learned those or learned something from what we talk about, which is really awesome.
Yeah, it's a positive impact. being made.
Absolutely, yeah, and hopefully they're picking up on the positive vibes that we're trying to send out as well. One thing I will say to people, if you are listening, like trying to help us spread that word and that message, like for a really small channel like us, just hitting that subscribe button or even putting a like and a comment, but mainly subscribe really does help us like grow and get ourselves out there. So if you are listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, this is good content and this is the stuff that I think other people need to hear, then yeah, if you can do that and share it around your local community, that'd be much appreciated. And if you want to give us even more support than that, obviously we have the Patreon if you want to give us some direct support. But either way, it's to all the people that we met on that day and people that keep reaching out to us. Like, you know, it's massively appreciated, and it's fantastic to see that you guys are all getting more and more into Kill Team.
And also, don't be afraid to write in with your questions. Let us know if there's any areas you'd like us to cover or any like bespoke areas you want us to talk about that we could maybe help you with. Let us know.
For sure. Okay, so the other cool thing that happened or that came out at the weekend was obviously the Arbites rules, right? So should we have a little chat about that, Conor? What do you think?
I think they were looking good, and now they're looking even better. I don't know what you think.
I think they are. So I think they're going to be a really strong team, and I think they're going to be a really strong team against certain opponents, though. So I think they do have some bad matchups potentially, and I think Nurgle Legionary might be one of the ones that they particularly struggle with. That and probably Intercession, which I think because of the way that we'll look at the percentages of the meta and how many people play those teams. I think it's like almost 20% of the metas is playing those elite teams. Will probably hurt their win rate initially, so you'll probably see them post some bad scores as people try to figure out that matchup. But I don't think it's all bad news for them. I think there might be a way that they can get around it with a bit of activation advantage and a bit of use of their ploys and some of their weapons. So I'm interested to see. I really want to get my hands on and play them because they've got some real spicy stuff. One of the things that I'll address some of the main points just from my initial assessment. So this is like a finger in the air how I'm looking at them as a team is. I think people are seeing the guys with the shields and the mauls and thinking this is a melee team and I really want to go heavy into melee. And I don't think that's actually what this team is going to be good at. I think this team is going to be much better at shooting, and they're going to be they're going to be as effective as or better, I say, in some ways as Pathfinders were. So their ability for their shotguns to have a sort of super indirect because you're taking people out of cover altogether within 4 inches with a reroll. With a 4/4 damage weapon hitting on 3s is really punchy.
It's like the ultimate anti-creep weapon.
Yeah, so there's going to be KFC buckets everywhere going to pieces, like because it's time to popcorn some chicken, I think, because those guns are mean against 8-wing models, and additionally, teams like Void Dancers could potentially get really hurt by this as well. And I'm loving the idea that you can potentially pin a Void Dancer down and cuff them, or just mount them in the head till they die. But like, yeah, I think those Eldari teams and the Guard equivalent teams are going to struggle because 4/4 damage guns with that sort of reliability of shooting is going to be quite punishing. And you also can't hide in melee with them because if you're within 6 inches, they can then shoot into melee as well. So that's pretty cool. And I can see that being a difficult matchup for a lot of teams. But there's a few other things that I think is just worth touching on. So obviously they are generically quite a close range, high damage team, but they are lacking AP. So they've got AP in the form of a grenade launcher, and they've got AP in the form of a crack grenade. Other than that, I haven't seen any AP for them to be able to use. So they're really looking at trying to get that volume of fire through. So if you're playing that team, I think you're going to have to be making use of that balance within 4 inches for your shooting, because if you're going into power armor and you're not getting at least 3 or 4 hits each time you shoot, you're probably not going to get the damage through that you want. And I think the next step is probably going to be using that relentless ploy that they have to try and really make sure that they get enough hits through to saturate the armor. But the other thing that I notice is that they do seem to have some mission play. So they have the ability to forward deploy an operator with the fly ability. Now that could be really, really strong for certain missions and that sort of stuff, being able to get out the board really fast. And they have another operator that can do the mission action for free. So my initial assessment when I'm looking at them is they've got some shooting damage and they've got some reliability there. They've got some mission play. My main concern about the team is probably going to be their survivability. I'm worried that 7 wounds, 4 up save, just as I've said before, with the Kazakin could be rough. Now, 11 activations, you might have to play around that a little bit, and they do have a silent weapon and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm I'm worried that they might fold really quickly to like bolt gun fire with like lethal 5 against them. So that's kind of my initial analysis of that team. And I'm not going to go into Jakari today because I haven't read him enough, and I don't want to give like a half baked opinion. I think I need to do a bit more reading and try and understand them a bit more. Any thoughts on the Arbites, Conor?
So first I want to say it's probably a good indicator that we've highlighted some strengths and some weaknesses. If there were no weaknesses, it might be a sign that this is a team that could do with nothing. So it's great that we're like, oh, these guys are going to lean very well into this side and might struggle coming up against that. It means you've already got some thinking to do and they're not going to be overpowered. Or, again, an initial assessment, but it's looking like a promising place for a team to land when coming straight out of the box.
Yeah, I think so. Like my gut is that they seem to have quite a big toolbox. So I think if people can figure out that elite matchup, and I'm going to try and spend some brain power trying to do it, I reckon that they could be really strong going forwards. So we'll have to wait and see, but that's my gut.
What's your opinion on their CP budget? Because they're looking quite CP hungry. Like all their strat ploys look brilliant and you can't use them all.
Oh yeah, they are very CP hungry because the indirect shotguns and I say indirect, it's not quite indirect, but you know what I mean. Indirect and the balance is 2 CP a turn. So turn 1 you don't want to be spending it, but if you go against that aggressive northern meta and they use models across the board, dude, you might be in trouble. You might get caught lacking if you don't have those rerolls and that indirect. So yeah, like CP management for that team is going to be tough, and you're going to have to be able to read your opponent quite a bit to know what they bring or they're not bringing to be able to actually balance that one out. I'll be interested to see how it goes, but yeah, they could be CP hungry. So the new missions, obviously, or the new match play sequence is good for them, but I'll be interested to see how they get on. And I've got a feeling that they're going to run out of steam on turn 4 if you don't get done what you need to get done, to turn 2 and turn 3. So it'll be interesting to see. One thing I will say as well, like arresting people is pretty funny, but and it is good memes, but it's probably not as tactically relevant as people make it out to be. I think it's quite a lot of investment to give people the manacles just to chain guys up, and then yeah, I can't see it being too relevant, but we'll see. Yeah, cool. And the other thing as well that we want to start bringing into these sort of weekly episodes is a bit of a look at the stats, because you quite like numbers, Conor, and you like being able to make those assessments.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's always good as a way to, I think, have a bit of a realistic outlook of where our perception is, because although we might be perceiving a team to be strong or weak or whatever, it's good to see actually what the stats say and do they back that up or not. So if we head on into your stats corner, Conor, what data have you got for us to look at?
Let's start by saying this information comes from a guy called Hot Sauce Teddy, and thanks for compiling this. He's collated a lot of information from various tournaments. I think globally. Is it globally?
Yeah, globally.
Yeah. So there's so much data here, and you can dig into it. But we're going to be looking at the win rates for the larger tournaments, like 16 plus players, 4 plus rounds. What's interesting is the top 3 teams that we're looking at, Lucidian Starstriders are top. So they've got a 63% win rate at the minute, at just 2.76% of the meta. Then second is Galapox Infected, a 61.8% win rate, at 4.84% of the meta. And then third is Void Dancer Troop, 61.5% win rate and 3.46% of the meta. Then the flip side of that, looking at the teams that aren't doing as well, Hyrotech Circle only have a 20.3% win rate at tournaments and occupy just 2.7% of the meta. Phobos, 26.9% win rate, 3.11% of the meta, and Recruit Farstalkers, 33.9% win rate and 3.8% of the meta. One thing I do want to say, because I think it's interesting, with Recruit, let's start with Recruit. So with Recruit, in December, there were just 12 players running Recruit in tournaments, and then we had that data slate drop, and in January, it jumped up to 40. So I think we're going to start seeing that percentage of the meta rise and probably start seeing the win rate rise. Not from me, but from good players. They're going to start bringing that average up, I think. And similarly, we saw a similar change to Star Striders. In December, there were only 8 players running them. And in January, after the data slate 23.
I'm actually gonna sort of disagree. So like I think it's interesting looking at the Crute win rate, because I think personally that they are stronger than their win rate indicates.
Yeah, I think it's lagging behind from that earlier data, and as more people play it, I think we're going to see that rise.
So well, no. So the reason why I think it is where it is currently is this 2 points. One is you have to look at what matchups they're good at and what matchups they're bad at. So Crute are bad at matching into elites. So as their percentage of the meta increases, we have to acknowledge that the elites meta is still 20% of the games played. So as more people pick up Crute, more people are playing Crute into that harder matchup, and therefore you're going to see a disproportionate increase in the
So you think it's going to go down even more? You think you're going to see?
Well, I think it'll stay roughly where it is. It might go up slightly, but as people learn the team, because the other thing is that, as you said, like it's gone up from a lot of new players. So before there was maybe like 10 players, you said, and now it's going up to 40 players. So that's a huge jump in a month of stats. So I think there's a lot of people that have looked at Crute in the past, been told that they're not very good and not very effective, and have said, you know what, I'll probably not use them just yet. And then they've been told recently, actually, this is a really strong team and you should pick them up. But they are a strong team, but they're actually very hard to play, right? Because they're all about scoring points and min-maxing and understanding how to play those objectives really, really well. And they have some really tough matchups. So I think when you start seeing them go into those tough matchups more frequently, for a lot of the new players that aren't very experienced with the team, they've not learned that counter yet, and they don't necessarily understand it. So as a result, we're seeing them way down lower than we would expect to. Very, very close to both Phobos and Hieratech, which is quite interesting.
Well, I think this data really highlights how much Hieratech and Phobos are struggling. Perhaps could do with a bit more tweaking. And also, interestingly, like think about what you just said. Then I actually quite like where Crute are at the minute, and I don't think that, like, you could almost say there's an argument to buff them a little more, but I don't see it yet. I almost want to let the dust settle and see how it lands. We'll see.
Yeah, the other things I'll just touch on is like High-Tech Circle. We knew that the buff wasn't going to be very successful. It hasn't been. They're probably still the worst team in the game, I think. Phobos, as expected, lack of reliability. With the rest of the elites that are in the meta, they're going to really struggle to punch out of that. And Crute down there, but we'll see. I think they'll go up slightly. They might go above sort of Kazakin again. But I think as more people join that Crute train, you'll see that win rate stay quite low. As they're hard to play. They've got a lot of difficult choices, and they've got poor matchups into a lot of the meta. Conversely to that, I think we should probably look at those top three teams, because I think that's something that's interesting to talk about as well.
So my first observation, interestingly, was I was talking to David, Kloster's friend that came from Hungary, and he observed that in this Warhammer World Tournament, there were no Galapox. And then, looking at here, Galapox are still looking pretty strong. I wonder if this is including Into the Dark. And we played an open board tournament, didn't we? But Galapox looking very comfortable.
I actually think Galapox might be better on open board, but that's a controversial opinion. I think that there's some of the Spanish guys think that as well, but I've not played with them or against them enough to definitively say, I don't think. So, yeah, but they oddly weren't represented at Warhammer World, which is odd because they're 4.8% of the meta at the moment. So you'd expect to see at least one of them turning up. But there's an interesting thing that I would note on the first two teams, both Starstriders and Galapox, is both of them are really good matchups into Navy breaches. And we've seen recently breaches have a huge surge up to 6% of the meta, because everyone thinks that they're the best team ever and they're really, really broken. I get that they're definitely a strong team, but we're not necessarily yet seeing a win rate to see that. I mean, they're currently on 58%, which is slightly above what GW like it to be, but they're not running away with anything. But interestingly, Starstriders and Galapox, I think, are very good into breaches, and they're very good into the elites as well. So what you have is those teams playing effectively a third of their games against a field that they're very effective against, right? And the more I'm playing with Starstriders, and seeing them play, the more I think maybe they're slightly overtuned, because they're able to be really effective both into elites, and they're also now being really effective into horde armies as well, and they're surging away a little bit on the win rates, and they're surging away with the amount of wins that they're getting, or tournament wins they're getting, based on their percentage of the meta that's actually taken them. So I think that the die-hard fans of that team are taking them, and they're definitely moving up. And I think a lot of that's to do with their damage mitigation. It's far better damage mitigation than what the breaches get, because it's damage mitigation where you want it, and they're far better at playing the objective. So we're seeing them skyrocket quite high up. I also think they're pretty good into the rest of the field. The one that's a bit surprising, I guess, is Void Dancer Troop, and that's one that I want to try and look at a little bit more, because I'm not quite able to put a reason yet or analysis as to why I think they're doing so well. I would have thought that they would be struggling into breaches, but maybe they've got what they need to have the tools to take them out. So that's interesting to see as well. So I guess that's kind of the top three to look out for at the moment. The boogeymen is Star Striders, Galapox, and Void Dancer Troop. And then the people that are struggling is your Hierotek, Phobos, and your crew. Honorable mention, by the way, Blooded are up to a 59% win rate, so they're doing well. I think the fact that their Pathfinders and all that sort of stuff have been nerfed around them might be really helping, and that combined with the mix of Into the Dark and open board tournaments.
What's your opinion of Void Dancers into Legionary and Intercession? Because they're the ones they're going to meet most, aren't they?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think initially everyone said that it's and I do still think it is favourable for the elite teams, right? So it's a hard matchup for the Void Dancers, but when they can play around with those kisses with the increased damage, there's a chance that they can, with some CP expenditure, get in and get some kills. Combine that with your fusion pistol and that sort of stuff, you might be able to pick up a few kills early on, and then before you know it, you can swing that tide of battle. So I don't think it's as dire as everyone thinks it is. I think it's actually a much closer game if the Void Dancer Troop player knows what they're doing. And then I think if the Legionary and the Intercession squad know what they're doing as well, then actually it's probably 55% in their favour, I would say. But you can play around that, and at the end of the day, Void Dancer Troop can always just hard play the objective. Just try and avoid them. Use that domino field to get out of jail free. And if you're a good player with them, you probably don't have to spend domino field turn one. So the fact that it's gone to 1+ CP might not be hurting them as much as we thought it would be. So yeah, I guess the CP boosts and that sort of stuff and the nerfs maybe haven't hit them where it needs to be. But let's watch that over the next few weeks and see where it goes, because maybe it will change, as time goes on. And it's interesting seeing that they're actually a bit lower when you look at just all of the win rates for all events. They're down at 55%, so they're not doing quite so well at the lower tables, but doing much better at the higher tables and bigger events. So that's interesting to see, I guess.
What about, so you've obviously played Cluster now, who's running Star Striders, and you're looking at the data there in front of you. Is there an argument that Elicidian Star Striders are over tweaked? Do they need to be nerfed, or what do you think?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, I don't think I'm not going to try and say the reason why I lost was because Star Striders are broken. That's not why. The reason I lost is because I got significantly outplayed. I I don't want to take anything away from that at all. I lost fair and square based on I had a bad strategy, he had a better strategy, and he prepared better for that game. So no illusions there. But do I think Star Striders are probably doing better than they should be and have an easier time of it? I think so, yeah. And I'm not quite sure how you surgically alter that, because it can be quite difficult to change it. I think the damage mitigation might be slightly too strong. It's putting them up to an average of sort of 10 wounds per model on the objectives that they want to be, and they have a really good strategies to be able to play the objectives. And we'll get Cluster at some point to do a bit of a breakdown on Star Striders, and he can tell you how to play around it. But they're mean, so I think it would help if their blast on their assets went back to a 4+ and kept the mega laser at a 3+. That seems fair, I think, because them being able to do that every turn is pretty rough when everything's hitting on 3+. And then I think maybe there's something else that needs to be looked at with them as a team, because I think the reason why they're so good in general is because they're a massive toolbox team, right? And that's why they're so much fun to play with. So they're so much fun because they have so many options the whole way through the game. You know, you can re-roll your attacker defender, you can re-roll initiative if you need to, you can choose more equipment, you can, you know, like there's so many tweaks you can do throughout the game. And if you're in a situation, there's probably a ploy or a strategy that they have that's going to get you to be able to do better. And they can flex between shooting and they can flex between melee, and they're good in all those sort of areas. They've got more access to indirect because of the leader's pistols, all that sort of stuff. So they have a huge toolbox. They're really effective. And in the hands of a good player, they're going to go and win stuff, right? Because they have so much freedom to be able to use all of those tools and all those levers. So I can't see that changing just yet. And I want to make sure that when I make suggestions for you to, you know, like for tweaks to a team, that you don't take away that fun factor, because people are loving playing that team at the moment, and they are great fun. But I think I would suggest that they are overperforming slightly from where they should be. And I think Gellerpox probably are doing the same as well. I'm surprised by Void Dancer Troop, but I'm going to watch that and see. It might just be that their nerfs are, or that the other nerfs are meaning that they're having better matchups in future. Maybe that's it. And I reckon there's some data there that we need to look at. But I think it's useful just to have a look at the stats, right, and just see where teams are, but also to provide a little bit of analysis to it, because I think often people just look at pure win rates and just say win rates, you know, X, that therefore this team is broken and whatever else. And I don't think it's as simple as that. I think you can, you know, I think a lot of good players have suddenly swung to Star Striders because they think they're strong. And when all the good players who have high win rates naturally go to a certain faction, you're going to see that faction's win rate rise as a result. You know, if everyone like Ace and whoever else decided that they're going to play Hyrotech Circle non-stop from now on, you know, sure that he's probably like a 90% win rate. Sure, it's going to come down to a 70 because he's using a weak team, but that's going to massively buff where Hyrotech are sat. So, yeah, there's a little bit of analysis of where I think teams are and why I think they're there. Obviously, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on it as well. Like maybe you think there's a different reason why Void Dancer. Yeah, what have we missed? Why do you think Void Dancer are performing so well? Is it that the meta of elites is going down, maybe, and therefore those harder matchups are getting better, or has the Void Dancer players just figured that matchup out, and as a result, they're being much more successful? I'm not too sure. It'll be interesting to see what people think, but let us know. And once again, thank you to Hot Sauce Teddy for compiling all that data. That's incredible. I'll put a link down in the description, so if people want to look at it slow time and see the information he's put together for the community, they can do, because it really is useful data for us to have, which is pretty awesome stuff. Alrighty, so I think, Conor, that's going to bring us to the end of the episode, unless there's anything else you want to add in.
No, well, I will say thanks to all the staff at Warhammer World. I know obviously it sounds like you had some technical glitches and hiccups, but you overcame it brilliantly. It was a really good tournament. We had an absolute blast, didn't we, Ryan?
Yeah, it was incredible. And once again, I think, as I said, weirdly, the best weekend of Kill Team I've ever had. Not for the kill team in a way, but for the people and all that sort of stuff. And as I said, like my last game against Clostry, like I got thrashed and I absolutely loved it. Which is like, you know, it's like a really weird place to be in, where you finish a game where you go, dude, I didn't lose that because of dice or anything like that. No. None of that was a reason why I lost.
Skilled.
I was outplayed. I didn't prepare for it properly. I didn't have a good strategy, and the better player won the day. And that's really awesome for me. So that was the first major win for Turning Point Tactics of the year, because obviously he's part of the team. So that's, you know, I'm massively happy that one of the team managed to get up there and get a podium place, which is really cool. And everyone else sort of like got significantly better than me. I think I might have been the worst performer, but I'm pretty happy that the team's doing really well. And it was great to see him go up and get that first place prize. So that was pretty awesome. Okay. Enough of that. You know, we all had a great time. I'm sure everyone that was there did as well. And we'll look forward to seeing you in future tournaments. But hopefully, for the people who have been listening, you found something new or useful in that conversation. And if you did, throwing us a like, as I said, would be greatly appreciated, or hit that subscribe button to make sure you get notifications next time an episode drops. As I said, that really does help a small channel like us get off the ground. If you can't wait for that and you do want early access, we do have a Patreon where you can get exclusive access to all of this content ahead of time, and a bunch of other small things that we chuck in there for patrons only. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. So drop us a comment below and we'll get right to you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Ryan. This has been Turning Point Tactics, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.